It took just 3 seconds for Sophia Martin, a seasoned employee of Regulus Airways, to decide that Adrien Devereux didn't belong in the first-class lounge. His flawless Italian suit and composed demeanor meant nothing to her. The only thing she saw was his skin color. "Security," she murmured, eyes narrowing with prejudice. The gesture came as second nature, instinctive, thoughtless. What she failed to see was the tech empire Adrien had built from the ground up.
A multibillion-dollar corporation.
No one else seemed to notice either, or if they did, they pretended not to. As security approached and escorted Adrien out of the lounge, other passengers looked away, eyes glued to their phones as if it were none of their concern.
All except one, Julien, a young interne in regalie uniforme.
He froze as he recognized Adrien Devereux, founder of Devereux Systems, a legendary name in the world of AI technology. Adrien didn't resist. He wasn't angry. He simply pulled out his phone and spoke a single quiet command, one powerful enough to shake an entire corporation.
Activate Raven Protocol. Observation mode, begin.
In that moment, the fate of Regulus Airways was sealed. They thought they were removing an unfit passenger. But no, they had just declared war on a man who had spent his whole life preparing for this exact moment. The moment when discrimination would come face to face with power, strategy, and unstoppable justice. The sleek black Bentley glided like silk up to the departure gate of Washington International Airport. The driver stepped out just as the platinum watch on Adrien Devereux's wrist ticked to 8:37 and opened the rear door with military precision. Adrien stepped out, carrying a leather briefcase and a compact suitcase, his eyes sharp as they scanned the automatic glass doors ahead, more like he was entering a high-stakes boardroom than an airport terminal. "Would you like help with your luggage, Mr. Devereux?" the driver asked, standing upright like a soldier. "No need, Marcus. I've been traveling light for years now." Adrien adjusted his cuff, revealing platinum cufflinks, a gift he gave himself after closing his first billion-dollar deal at 30. "When should I pick you up, sir?" Marcus asked. "When I arrive in San Francisco, I'll send the details. For today, take the day off. That's an order." Marcus smiled. "Yes, sir." Adrien entered the departure hall. Instantly, as if triggered by a shift in the atmosphere, the space around him changed. A black man. Confident. Wearing a luxury suit. Carrying sleek luggage, an uncommon presence in a space reserved for the exceptional class. He didn't need to look to sense the glances, fleeting, discreet, but unmistakably real. A white woman clutched her handbag slightly tighter as he passed. A security guard subtly adjusted his stance, suddenly more alert. A man frowned at the platinum tier card in Adrien's hand. Adrien didn't react. Not even a flicker. He was used to this. The micro-expressions, the silent repetitions that trailed his steps like the background score of his life, the white noise of prejudice. He didn't fight it with emotion. He fought it with control. The Regulus Airways first-class check-in counter stood empty. He approached. 2 female attendants were stationed behind it. The younger one, according to her name tag, Erica, smiled with professional grace. The other, older, blonde hair pinned high, eyes sharp behind thin-rimmed glasses, Sophia Martin. Adrien placed his membership card and ID on the counter. Regulus Airways. 11:30 to San Francisco. Sophia took the documents. Her smile was tight-lipped, her eyes far from friendly. "How are you today, sir?" She lingered on sir, like it was a challenge. "Very well, thank you," Adrien replied, locking eyes with her. Sophia began typing, each keystroke deliberate, almost punitive. "Business or pleasure, sir?" "Business." She glanced at the photo ID, then at him, as if doubting the two matched. Leaning slightly toward Erica, she whispered, "He's that startup guy, probably just got lucky." Adrien heard every word. He had heard variations of it hundreds of times. "Here's your boarding pass, Mr. Devereux," Sophia said, lips tight, voice frosty. "Boarding begins at 10:45. First-class lounge is to your left." Adrien took the documents. He knew her eyes would stay on him as he walked away. He was used to that, too. The initial security screening went smoothly. Adrien was long accustomed to the scrutinizing glances, the performative nods of politeness, and the way TSA agents always seemed to randomly select him for extra screening. This time was no different. You've been selected for additional screening, an officer said without a hint of apology. Gloved hands began patting him down at an oddly slow pace. Adrian didn't react. His face remained expressionless, cold as stone. So composed, it made others uncomfortable. This was the 14th time that year. He kept count. Not out of suspicion. Out of data collection. Every instance where he was treated as a potential threat, his system logged it. And now, the Raven protocol was analyzing every interaction, every camera angle, every facial twitch. 20 minutes later, Adrian approached the entrance to Regulus Airways' first-class lounge. A young blonde attendant stood behind the reception desk, smiling politely. His name tag read, Ryan. Good morning, sir. May I see your boarding pass and ID, please? Adrian nodded and handed over his documents. And then, Sophia Martin reappeared. Her breath was slightly labored, as if she'd hurried over. No one had called her. No one had needed her. But she was there. I'll handle this one, Sophia said curtly, cutting Ryan off with a cold nod. Ryan frowned but stepped aside. Adrian said nothing. He handed over his documents again. Sophia took the boarding pass like it was evidence in a trial. She flipped it back and forth, squinting as if she expected to find a flaw. Is there a problem? Adrian asked, his voice low and calm. Deep water. Just following procedure, sir, she replied. The word sir was now mockery. Tickets like this don't usually come from random sources, she added, eyes narrowing to slits. Is something unusual about it? Adrian replied, unfazed. Sophia leaned over her screen, frowning. This ticket might not be valid. It could belong to someone else, or it might have been issued to a corporate employee. She let the implication hang in the air like smoke. A man in a polo shirt nearby chuckled under his breath. Maybe he got lost. Coach is that way. Sophia didn't correct him. Didn't say a word. She stood straighter, as if bolstered by the comment. I'll need to run a verification, she declared. Adrian calmly produced a sleek black credit card, American Express Centurion. Does this qualify? He asked. Sophia's eyes flickered. Just for a second. But then she recovered. Anyone can carry that. I'm calling security. She turned and picked up the phone, didn't wait for a response. Adrian stood still beside her. Spine straight.
No tensión. No protest.
He never reacted. Because reacting was surrendering power. He never surrendered power. Less than 2 minutes later, a tall, broad-shouldered man with silver-streaked hair appeared. His eyes were sharp, composed. Victor Grant, head of airport security. What's the situation here? He asked professionally, though his eyes briefly scanned Adrian with understanding. This guest has a suspicious ticket, Sophia said loudly, for all to hear. I need him removed from the lounge area. Grant turned to Adrian. May I see your documents, sir? Adrian handed them over. Grant examined them. His eyes shifted slightly. Then he turned back to Sophia. Everything's valid. Sophia's jaw tightened. But I think something's wrong. The system might not be updated. The system shows no alerts, Grant said clearly. There's no reason to remove him. I still recommend removing him, she insisted. Grant hesitated. Caught between protocol and principle, he sighed. Sir, I apologize, but I'll need you to come with me to the security office for verification. Just procedure. Adrian nodded. Understood. As they walked away, a pair of wide eyes tracked them. Julian, the young Regulus intern, stood behind the desk, pale-faced. He was already furiously texting. They just kicked Adrian Devereux out of the lounge. With their own hands. We are so screwed. The security office was unervingly quiet. Victor Grant sat across from Adrian, a file folder in his hands that he had no real reason to open. On the table lay Adrian's boarding pass, ID, and Centurion card, neatly arranged like evidence in a case with no crime. Mr. Devereux, Victor said slowly, voice low with guilt, I know who you are. This shouldn't have happened.
I'm sorry.
Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took out his phone, opened a secure app, and spoke a single sentence. Adrian Devereux. Raven Protocol. Full surveillance mode. The screen flickered briefly, then went dark. Not far away, inside the airport's tech hub, Julian, the nervous IT intern, was hammering out a message to his friend Derek, a full-time systems engineer. Julian, Derek. They just kicked Adrian Devereux out of the lounge. Derek, are you serious? Julian, saw it with my own eyes. Sophia Martin called security like he was a threat. They have no idea who he is. CEO of Devereux Systems. This airport's AI backbone runs on his tech. Derek, oh, we're so screwed. Derek shot upright in the IT staff break room. His coffee tipped and spilled, but he didn't notice. If Julian was right, Regulus Airways hadn't just insulted a passenger. They had just declared war on the architect of the very system that powered the modern aviation infrastructure. At that exact moment, memory stirred. At 8 years old, Adrian sat alone on the steps of St. Edmund's home, clutching a weathered notebook filled with symbols and equations no one around him could understand. His guardian, Mrs. Patterson, sat beside him. Your aunt won't be coming today, she said softly. Adrian just nodded. He wasn't surprised. That's okay, he replied, eyes back on the page. I'm finishing a forecasting model. Forecasting what, sweetheart? She asked. If you know the denominator, he said, you can know what's next. At 14, Adrian had cycled through 4 foster homes. He learned faster than anyone his age, but was always isolated, bullied, and labeled different. Only Mr. Winters, his math teacher at Bradford High, saw the truth. The quiet black kid with the intense gaze was a genius. You don't belong in this classroom, Winters once said after school. Adrian simply handed him his latest notebook. Inside was a prototype AI model that could forecast market volatility. Winters scanned the code, then looked up, astonished. Adrian, you shouldn't be in MIT. You should be teaching there. At 17, Adrian worked 3 jobs: morning barista, afternoon library assistant, weekend dishwasher. Every dollar went into scavenged computer parts, assembled into a rig in the cramped bedroom of his 5th foster home. You're going to burn out, said Jim, his foster dad, one night. I'm fine, Adrian murmured, eyes glued to lines of code. What's so urgent? Adrian paused. It's an app. Forecasts food shortages using global climate data. Jim stared, then sighed. You're not like anyone I've ever met. You know that. The next day, Adrian came home to find an envelope on the table. Inside, a full-ride scholarship to MIT. But success never came easy. At 19, with a working prototype of his food crisis predictor in hand, Adrian was invited to pitch to 3 investors at Winston & Finch. After 30 minutes of presentation, they smiled and extended an offer. We'd like to buy your system for $50,000. Adrian froze. This tech has international interest. It's worth millions. Adrian, they said with thin smiles, you're a black college student.
No backing.
No name. This is the best deal you'll get. He refused. 6 months later, their firm launched a new product, strikingly similar to his. He received no credit.
No royalties.
No justice. So when Sophia Martin tried to eject him from the first-class lounge, it wasn't just a case of poor judgment. It was the last straw in a life full of being underestimated, dismissed, and excluded. Adrian didn't just build a tech empire. He built a shield. The Raven Protocol wasn't just software. It was the armor of a child no one believed in. Now watching, learning, and preparing to fight back. The next morning, at Washington International Airport, inside the IT department's maintenance lounge, Derek Wells stared at the main operations screen. System alerts for Regulus Airways were flashing in rapid succession. Flight schedules disappearing and reappearing automatically. Elite member statuses downgraded to economy. Credit cards declined despite available credit. Panic rippled through the IT team. Cyber attack. No signs of external breach. Then, internal error? Derek narrowed his eyes at the analytics dashboard.
No.
Someone is manipulating the system, from the inside. Precisely. Surgically. This isn't a glitch. It's a technological incision. Meanwhile, A grainy video began circulating on social media. It showed Adrian Devereux standing calmly in the first-class lounge as Sophia shouted into a phone and two security officers approached. The bold caption underneath read, "This is what happens when you try to fly first class in the wrong skin." The hashtag #FlyWhileBlack began trending globally. At Regulus Airways' PR office, phones rang non-stop. The call center staff couldn't keep up. "We're getting flooded with press inquiries about Mr. Adrian Devereux," said one employee. New York Times, CNN, Bloomberg, everyone's digging in. The crisis management team snapped into emergency mode. "We need a public statement." "An official apology?"
No.
Blame the employee. Frame it as an isolated incident. Across the Atlantic at Regulus headquarters in Zurich, CEO and Chairman Charles Whitmore was having lunch at a luxury hotel with a familiar senator when his private secretary whispered in his ear, "There's an incident involving Adrian Devereux." Devereux. Charles frowned. That name rings a bell. The founder of Devereux Systems. Their AI powers our entire airport operations platform. Charles set his wine glass down, his gaze sharpening. "He's the one Sophia kicked out of the lounge?" "Yes, sir. And the video is going viral. The media's exploding." Elsewhere. Inside the command center of Raven Protocol, located in a classified off-grid facility, Leah Okoro, former intelligence agent and now global director of security at Devereux Systems, was monitoring the live data stream. Regulus' first response, cover-up and scapegoating. As expected. A systems analyst raised his hand. "We've successfully injected the exploit into their internal HR system. They're unaware. We now have access to complaint histories, internal emails, disciplinary records." Leah nodded. "Pull everything. I want a full report on how many passengers Sophia Martin has discriminated against, and who shielded her from consequences." Not far away, in a quiet cafe beyond airport grounds, Erica, the young employee who had stood beside Sophia at the check-in counter, was silently watching the same video. Her hands trembled slightly as she heard Sophia's voice, saw Adrian's expression, and confronted her own silence. A text message popped up from someone on air traffic control. "What will you do, Erica?" She took a long breath. Then typed, "I'll speak." Inside the boardroom of Devereux Systems, Adrian stepped in, his expression calm as ever. On the wall, a live news broadcast played silently. CNN headline. Tech CEO racially profiled at airport, Regulus faces mounting backlash. Adrian looked at the screen for only a moment, then said quietly, "Initiate Phase 2. Inside the glass-walled top-floor office, Charles Whitmore stood by the window, a glass of scotch in hand, gazing out over the city. On the monitor in front of him, headlines flashed in relentless succession. Regulus accused of racial profiling against prominent black CEO.
#FlyWhileBlack hits dièse un global trend.
Regulus loses 7% market value in 8 hours.
The door flew open. Ethan Ross, Regali, Crisis Management Director, Entered, Cold and Controlled. You roulette, Charles muttered, without Turnin.
"I'm right on time for the truth," Ethan replied, tossing a tablet onto the table. On its screen, a single line glowed. "Raven Protocol has infiltrated Regulus internal systems. We are being watched from within." At Devereux Systems Sub-HQ in Berlin, Leah Okoro confirmed over a secure channel, Phase 2. "It's underway. We have access to internal emails, HR investigation logs, compliance training data, and records never meant to be seen." An analyst raised a hand. 12 formal complaints against Sophia Martin. 9 were closed without reason. Blocked by Regional HR Director Gregor Altman. "Log it," Leah ordered. Next, who approved the SOP for first-class profiling? Found it. The language reads, "Unfamiliar passengers not wearing brand identifiers may require additional screening." Leah narrowed her eyes. So if they don't look like them, they're suspicious. In a modest apartment in the East DC suburbs, Julian, the IT intern who filmed the original video, sat before his screen. A message pinged from an anonymous source.
"We saw what you did. You Renault Talon."
Attached was a data file. Inside, TSA secondary screening rates for black passengers on Regulus flights, 3 times higher than average. Names of internal employees demoted after filing discrimination complaints. Julian stared at the spreadsheet, heart pounding. At Devereux HQ in San Francisco, Adrian stood before a digital war wall. Displayed.
Regalie, shareholder structure.
Cash flow routed through Cayman shell companies. Internal emails detailing PR strategies for discrimination lawsuits. I'm not retaliating, Adrian said, voice low, sharp as a blade long honed. I'm pulling back the curtain on what should have been seen all along. Rebecca Lawson, his general counsel, nodded. With this evidence, we can file complaints with the Department of Transportation, the SEC, and the Federal Human Rights Commission. Leah added. And this isn't just legal. It's narrative. A story about how power hides behind the mask of procedure.
Inside Regalie, panic spread.
Departments buzzed. Employees exchanged glances, fearing what emails from the past might surface. Some submitted resignations on the spot. Erica, the young check-in agent who'd witnessed it all, received a message from Devereux Systems.
If you're ready to speak the truth, we'll protect you.
She looked around the break room, once Sophia's little kingdom of petty authority. Then clicked, I agree.
Adrian knew great empire don't fall because of one person. They crumble when the bricks stop holding up the wall.
At 8:13 a.m. in Regulus HQ Zurich, the 17th floor boardroom was tense. Executives sat around a marble table like generals at war. On the screen, CNN streamed live. Breaking, former Regulus staff expose internal discrimination system. Over 12 formal complaints buried. Veteran board member William Fletcher adjusted his glasses.
This is out of control.
Charles Whitmore's tone remained firm.
This is just a media stunt.
We've weathered worse. But Helen Voss, COO, spoke up for the first time. We've never been hit from all directions at once. And this time, the opponent is Adrian Devereux.
Not a headline.
Not an angry customer. A tech ecosystem and a moral ideology.
Charles glanced at Hélène.
But she didn't look away. At 10:20 a.m. in Devereux Legal, San Francisco, Rebecca Lawson filed formal complaints to the DOT and SEC. At the same time, Devereux Systems' PR team released a single stark statement. Justice does not emerge from silence. True power is using truth to rebuild systems, not keep them alive. Within 1 hour, it was shared over 100,000 times. At 11:08 a.m. in major airports worldwide. JFK, New York, 6 Regulus flights delayed due to data sync errors.
Heathrow, London, Regalie auto check-in system crash.
Tokyo, premium passengers complain of lost seat status, blamed on Regulus software glitches. Internal IT scrambled. But the system behaved willfully. Fix one bug, 3 more appeared. We're being manipulated from inside, whispered the head engineer. At 1 p.m., during an emergency board meeting at Regulus, Fletcher said bluntly, "We need to remove Charles." Ridiculous. Charles snapped. You're surrendering? Just give it 48 more hours. The media storm will pass. Helen replied. And in those 48 hours, stocks will drop 30%. Investors will pull out. Regulators will freeze accounts. The transport secretary is calling for a federal investigation. A quiet board member added. Devereux just offered to buy majority shares at double market price. On one condition, Charles steps down. At the Regulus PR office, Ethan Ross gave orders coldly. We need dirt on Devereux. Scandals. Misconduct.
Personality.
Anything.
A staff hesitated. What if there's nothing?
Ethan didn't flinch. Then we invent it. At 4:43 p.m., breaking news hit.
A tabloid ran a sensational headline.
Devereux accused of harassment in 2018. Was it covered up? 30 minutes later, the article vanished. At the same time, another site leaked emails proving Ethan Ross paid for the hit piece. It was organized media defamation. Leah Okoro chuckled, reporting to Adrian. They just fired the first shot, and hit themselves. At 5:30 p.m., Regulus HQ staff began leaving the building. Sophia Martin, the spark that lit the fire, was summoned to HR. Videos of her behavior went viral. Public pressure demanded her termination. At 6 p.m., every Regulus employee received a message in their inbox. We did not attack your systems. We revealed the truth. This is not a breach. This is a liberation.
Raven Protocol.
8:17 a.m., Regulus Airways headquarters, Zurich. Charles Whitmore had never felt this boardroom so small. The air was as heavy as concrete. The board members sat still, their faces ashen. On the screen, CNBC was broadcasting live. Devereux Systems offers to acquire controlling shares of Regulus Airways at twice the market price, pledging to retain all staff for 2 years and restructure the company culture. Helen Voss, composed and razor-sharp, flipped through the dossier in her hand. This is their offer. And it's our last chance. Charles shot to his feet, eyes bloodshot. You're going to sell Regulus to that kid? I built this company from nothing. William Fletcher replied coldly. So did he, Charles. The difference is, he didn't build it on deception. 9:23, the vote commenced. The result, 11 in favor, 1 abstention, 1 opposed. Moments later, a press release went out. The board of directors of Regulus Airways has officially accepted the offer from Devereux Systems. A new era begins, one of transparency, accountability, and innovation. At that same moment, Devereux office, San Francisco. Leah Okoro and Rebecca Lawson stepped into the meeting room. Adrian stood by the window, gazing out over the bay, a cup of untouched coffee in his hand. We have the company, Rebecca said. Adrian didn't smile. We didn't need an airline. We needed an equal way to move. Leah nodded. Are we changing the name? Adrian turned. Regulus doesn't fit anymore. He pulled a slim folder from a drawer and placed it on the table. Coal Air. Where everyone belongs. 12:30, the official video announcement was broadcast across all media platforms. Adrian Devereux, in a black suit, standing in front of a newly painted plane bearing the Coal Air logo, looked directly into the camera. I didn't win. I just put a system back where it should have been. We don't need to tear everything down. We need to rebuild what's right, from the inside out. Coal Air isn't just a new airline. It's a reminder. Everyone deserves dignity, no matter what seat they're in, what color they are, or where they come from. At the former Regulus HQ, Charles was summoned to a private meeting room. 2 security officers stood waiting. On the table lay documents from the Department of Justice and the SEC. Preliminary charges. Financial concealment. Abuse of power. Internal misconduct cover-up. Obstruction of racial discrimination reporting. Charles froze when he saw the signature. Leah Okoro, Special Representative of Devereux Systems. That evening, at the new Coal Air Operations Center, Erica, the young employee who bravely spoke the truth, was introduced as the Director of Passenger Experience and Equity. Julian, the intern, was officially hired into the tech team. Victor Grant, the security supervisor who handled the initial incident with professionalism, became head of safety and human dignity, tasked with redesigning passenger engagement standards. And Adrian? He wasn't seated on a throne of victory. He walked alone into the night, past the old terminal where he had once been humiliated. He stopped. Looked up at the departure board, now bearing the Coal Air logo. Beside him stood an elderly black woman, holding a ticket, looking unsure of where to go. He smiled, stepped forward, and said, "May I help you, ma'am?" 3 months later, Washington National Airport. The plane bearing the new Coal Air logo touched down smoothly on the runway. Spring sunlight streamed through the massive arrival hall windows, where hundreds had gathered, press, passengers, employees, former staff from the old regime, and newly hired faces from across the country. An airport once seen as a symbol of division was now becoming the birthplace of a different message. On stage, Adrian Devereux stepped forward.
No tailored suit.
Just a simple shirt. No headset mic, no prepared remarks. He spoke with nothing but his real voice. I was once denied the right to step into this place. Not because I couldn't afford it. Not because I caused trouble. But because I didn't look like the people they were used to seeing here. He paused. Today, I didn't return for revenge. I returned to build a space where others won't have to go through what I did. We can't fix every mistake from the past. But we can start a new history today. In the front row, Julian wiped his eyes, Erica smiled softly, Victor Grant nodded slowly. Farther back, Helen Voss, now COO of Coal Air, sat silently. No speech, no spotlight. She didn't need it. She was there to witness. After the event, Adrian quietly walked into the terminal. He stood at the ticket counter. 3 months ago, Sophia Martin had looked at him there like an intruder. Now behind the counter was a middle-aged brown-skinned employee, wearing a blue shirt and a genuine smile.
No suspicion. No scrutiny.
Just one simple question. How can I help you today, sir? Adrian smiled. Nothing. I'm just taking in something that's changed. That evening, South Side, Chicago. The neighborhood Adrian grew up in still didn't look like the wealthy suburbs, but now it had the Devereux Foundation Tech Center, lit-up windows, a library, labs, kids learning to code instead of dreaming about winning the lottery. Adrian sat on an old stone bench, once the front steps of the orphanage he grew up in. In his hands, a replica of his first notebook, the one filled with childhood equations. A brown-skinned girl, about 10 years old, approached with a tablet in hand. You're the one who built that big place, right? I just helped, Adrian replied. I'm writing an algorithm, she said, holding up the screen. For facial recognition and emotion detection. Adrian smiled. If you can understand emotion, you can build a world better than I ever could. Sparkle's epilogue, more than an ending. The story of Adrian Devereux didn't end with shares, power, or a legal victory. It ended, and began again, with the possibility of changing a system through kindness, discipline, and intellect.
Noriben.
No violence. Just truth. Just persistence. And a belief. When you change the structure, you change history.